Copyright University of Auckland, all rights reserved. The content and delivery of lectures in this course are protected by copyright. Material belonging to others may have been used in these lectures and copied by and solely for the educational purposes of the university under license. You may record the lectures for the purposes of private study or research, but you may not sell, alter, or further reproduce or distribute any part of these lectures to any other person. Failure to comply with the terms of this warning may expose you to legal action for copyright infringement by the copyright owner and/or disciplinary action by the university.
Do I need to bring it to you or take it to the USA? So?
I'll hand it into the Thank you. Okay, let's get started with a few admin things. Whoops, microphone. Okay. First of all, I've subscribed everybody to the administration discussion, and it's an awful term, subscribed. But like you are forced subscribed to class announcements, okay? Class announcements are just a discussion that goes one way from me to you. And I think that's really silly, because if somebody's got a question about some announcement, then I think you should be able to come back and say, what's this or what's that, okay? So instead of I'm not going to be putting out CESL announcements, I'm going to be using that admin discussion for that. So everyone is going to stay force subscribed. It's exactly the same state as having announcements, and you need to know these things. Now, against my natural tendencies, I would like to force subscribe everybody to each discussion as I put them up, because really it's part of the class, and I don't know why you wouldn't want to hear what other people were saying, but I'm not going to. I'm going to leave it up to you. And if you don't want to get those things, like if there's when I put up a discussion on entity relationship modelling, then if you don't want to get those, if you don't want to learn about that, it's absolutely fine. You can opt in or opt out. Okay, so I'll announce that there's a discussion there, and then you can go and subscribe to it if you want to. It's a choice, because people complain and blah blah blah. So it's a choice. But I strongly advise you, because that's where questions can be answered, and one student's question is useful to all of us. I mean, I learn things about stuff through the discussions, no question. And of course, in the discussions, if you think you know the answer, you can have a go at it, because like Ron and I and Angel get all of those questions and answers. So if somebody does get something wrong, we can correct it. Okay, so do make use of the discussions. They certainly can be really useful, and especially when you get into, you're working with light switch or something, you can't just see how to do something, you're blocked by it. Instead of being held up by it, well, first of all, go and Google it and try and find it out there. But then if you can't find it, just get back onto a discussion. I guess I should set one up for light switch right now, and then ask the question. So please try and use like I will, we'll only have about half a dozen different discussions, but if we keep them sort of separate, it makes the whole thing a bit tidier. Okay, so that's that. Okay, thanks to you all for the enthusiasm which you embraced that sort of silly little problem. I mean, it was a silly little problem. Just wanted you to go through that sort of feeling of going through all those stages. And next week will be when you actually start to work on a real problem. So with that in mind, I said I would give you some, I'm trying to leave choice open to you here, so that you can choose something you might be interested in. So I'll put this, like I think some other lecturers sometimes use this book, Blue and White, which Andrew and I wrote years and years ago, which is still absolutely relevant, mostly, especially in the important parts. And I'll be touching on those when I give a really quick lecture on, or maybe even 2 lectures on modelling data. It is so important, and you'll see I have a slightly different take on it to maybe some of your other lecturers. I think it simplifies. I think you get the right answer quicker. And so I'll be going through that, and the rules for doing that are contained within this book. So I'll be revising those, because really, if you don't get the data structures right, then everything, it's the foundation. It's like when you're building a building, if you don't build the foundations right, it's pretty difficult to change it. And like I know this from personal experience, I've made many, many mistakes in data design. And to this day, there's within the CESL gradebook, there's like a mistake I made, well, even before CESL came into existence, because I built the first gradebook using Microsoft Access for my personal use, and I made some assumptions and did some things, and those assumptions and things like that have caused problems for us changing and evolving that particular data set over the years. It's made it more difficult because of something I did way back then, which I didn't even realize I was making a mistake. So we'll always make mistakes, there's always going to be difficulties, but if we can minimize them, better. But for today, in that book, which is a PDF, which I'll put up for you, there's a whole lot of cases that we've used in tests, and say draw an entity relationship model of this, or a use case, or whatever. and they're just little stories, okay? Most of them ones which I've made up about particular scenarios, okay? So for those who are embarking on their own project, on something that they want to do, you really need to write a little story like this. Just write down, just off the top of your head, the story about what it's going to do in a broad description. And I'll be asking you to give those to me. For those who haven't thought of anything, if you want to, you can choose one of these. If you say, okay, well, I want to do one on adventure tourism, or there's one on water pollution, and I mean, that's quite a good one because you could link that into what we're going to talk about today with the Internet of Things. And so just some more suggestions. And so by Tuesday, by the workshop on Tuesday, I would like to see that every group has a description like this. And if you just want to use one of these, well, okay, that can be your starting point. But I expect to see it embellished and you know, made richer. But that's all you need to start with. That's just a problem statement. This is the problem. Okay. So that's that. I just spoke to Ron, and he's just confirming that the test dates are as we said, and we will update those. And I thought there was a really good question today from somebody who said the course description, the text, which I'd put up as a Word file, doesn't reflect the dates. And that's true, that's my fault, I will correct it, but I just wanted to use that as an example of the danger of storing one piece of data in two places. Okay, you've all heard of normalization, all those sort of things. Well, here we have an example where we're essentially storing a date in a Word document and a date in a database in Cecil, and you know, the lecturer goes and thinks, okay, I have to update the dates in Cecil, and that's the official dates, but then of course there's this document sitting there that's got the wrong date in. It's a classical information system problem of having the same data in two different places, and it causes confusion. So it's just a good thing to keep in the back of your mind when you're designing. Lecture recordings will be up today. I got the first one for Monday, and there's none for last week because they weren't recording them. Okay, so any general questions about anything? No? Okay, good. Okay, so today I decided to kick off this time round with a discussion on the Internet of Things, because it is sort of, well, who's heard the term before? Oh, okay, is it going to work? Yes. Wow. Who's heard the term? Anyone heard the term? Internet of Things? Nobody. Wow, that's amazing. Oh well, something to learn. At least one thing. Because the internet, like everybody thinks about the internet, and your first impression, like almost everybody associates the internet with a browser. They associate the network with a browser. But that's not the network. The network, the browser is just something that transforms data, a whole lot of gobbledygook and HTML, etc., into human readable form. So our main experience of the internet and our main experience of networks really is our human interaction. But in fact, things, almost anything, can be enlivened to transmit its state and maybe to receive commands to change its state. So you can even, I was looking at this picture and thinking, wow, that's a bit, you know, actually putting, you know, bits of Lego down here is pretty strange. But you could actually embed in each one of these Lego pieces, you could actually embed some form of intelligence. I'm not saying this is economical or anything, okay, but you could, which actually had sensors on each of the little bobbles and then was able to sense how people were putting things together, so the people at the Lego factory could monitor what all these children and adults all over the world were building. Or imagine all these screens with coming up and you see all these people building things. May or may not be interesting, but even at that really primitive level, you could do it. So the Internet of Things is saying that like the Internet is there to transmit data, and we can transmit more and more data all the time. I'll give you an example. Like I think it was maybe last year sometime, my wife said, "Oh, the bathroom scales are broken," and I said, "Okay, we'll get some new ones." And I just happened to be watching a video, and there was this thing about these scales that weighed you and transmitted your data back to Mr. Fitbit is the name of the scales, and you could also wear things on your wrist to work out how far you'd walked, and so you could you know, achieve your target of becoming slim and fit and all that sort of thing. And like they cost, I think, about $50 more than the ones my wife was proposing to buy, and of course, being a geek, I couldn't resist buying them. And so I stand on these scales, transmits my weight up to this database, plots my weight. If you want to, you can put all your food, all your calories in, it can tell you the balance, blah, 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 all of this stuff, okay? So that was my first experience of a thing on the internet. All I had to do, stand on it, transmits my weight every time I stand on it. It knows who I am because it knows my weight profile compared to other people in the house. I don't have to key anything. I did at the beginning, I had to type in some initials or something like that. After that, it basically, like if my friend who was near the same weight as me stood on it, wouldn't be able to tell the difference. But you can imagine that fairly quickly it would be able to tell the difference because it could sniff a bit of DNA or something like that and say, this isn't David, this is somebody else, therefore I'm not going to record it as his weight. So already in my house I have an Internet of Things. Has anyone else got any devices like that in their lives? Anybody? No? No Internets of Things. Wow, there you go. So I'm just going to go through and look at just some examples of devices, especially that you haven't actually experienced these things. And in some ways, this statement here, network connectivity, is shifting from people to objects, driving the revolution of IoT, which is Internet of Things. And like for me, I've been working with devices on networks for, let's think, I suppose mid-80s. Okay, I was working in places like Fisher and Paykel. We were automating production, so that as a fridge or something, like somebody would order a fridge, and that order would go to the production line. Well, it would go to the suppliers first. It would source all the things that were required, the motor that was required, the colour of the steel, and then at the beginning of the line, a big piece of steel would be stamped out into the shape of the fridge, would start going along the line, and as it got to different points in the line, the appropriate motor for the country to which that fridge was going would arrive at that point, and that would be, of course, barcoded and all that sort of thing. And so within the systems that we build, you could actually see these things being built and constructed all the way down the line, and knew where everything was. Another example, well, for instance, and of course there was a network. So back then we had a network of things. So in industry, there's been networks of things forever. The big difference between the Internet of Things, is that it's universal. We have a universal worldwide network that we can plug into, whereas there we were just plugging into a local network that was managed on local servers, etc., etc. In a similar way, I worked on the New Zealand Air Force Orion aircraft, and within that aircraft we had a network, and we had many sensors coming in, measuring airspeed, radar, video feeds, all sorts of stuff coming into a network, a redundant network of computers as a command and control space for these search and rescue type aircraft. So it's not new, but the new thing is that we have this internet, we have this global internet, and so it's just opening things up, and there's huge amounts of potential for new business. Okay. So everything can change. There is so much opportunity, like the opportunity. I mean, there's always going to be opportunity for connecting humans up to computers, but now as we move towards connecting things up, we've got another whole evolution of things. Okay. So here's an example of just some of the many different arenas that you can imagine. So, you know, a big thing is homes, and like I think Apple have just bought a home automation company. Well, there's a particular one called Nest. I think Apple bought them. I think they bought Nest. Google's bought something. Microsoft have bought a company called Insteon, which basically, instead of just going and getting your security kit from, you know, Dick Smith's or somewhere like that, and you put in some cameras and they record what's on the cameras, now you can put in a controller that you can then have the client on your phone and you can see everything that's happening in your house. And of course the cost is heading down towards the sort of trivial level because it's just electronics. So smart retail, of course, we've experienced a lot of this already, but more and more penetration of actual devices rather than just people putting data in. Logistics, obviously, one of the 345 projects is working on a project for a trucking company. So they're looking at that. Obviously, in transport, you know, I mean, it's a miracle how the buses in Auckland are so bad because they are tied up to the sort of Internet of Things, but somehow they don't seem to make it work. I was just in London and they've got a similar system, and if the sign says a bus is coming in 1 minute, it arrives in 1 minute in that terribly congested place. So there's implementation problems there, just like with the school payroll. I mean, who could imagine that you couldn't get a payroll going in these days? Smart factories, I've talked about factories, whole cities, and we'll look at, and there's an example of waste I've got here, and obviously in hospitals, the ability to monitor where people are, you know, so that instead of, when you transfer someone from one ward to another, that instead of having to read the barcode just as they go through the door and RFID is read. Now, I've used a term. If you don't understand a term I use, because like in this industry we use a lot of jargon, as you probably noticed, and I use the term RFID. What's an RFID? You don't even have to interpret the letters, yes? Radio frequency identifier. Okay, so it's essentially a passive device. Now, I haven't checked this. I realised this morning when I realised I was going to use the word RFID, I should go and check it, but I didn't. But it's basically a passive device that when somebody transmits some radio signal to it, it excites it. That's the word electronic engineers use, sort of what weird word. Sort of lights it up and causes a response to send information back. Okay? I think that's how it works. I will find out for you exactly how it works. I should know, but I don't. But essentially, it's like these. Well, I mean, I've got a RFID on me here because I've got a swipe card. Okay, so a swipe card is, and I guess people are using, you know, these things to get in parking buildings and all around the buildings. You just have to hold it up. You just have to be near. It's proximity. Okay, and of course with credit cards now you can go and pay for your coffee without having to type in your PIN number and everything for purchases. So we're already experiencing all of these things. So I found this this little bunch of slides, which I don't necessarily think these are the coolest things, but they certainly give examples. And everywhere, I'm sure everyone's heard of Google Glass, you know, which is obviously is. It's just really a specialised sort of screen, isn't it? But you know, it's obviously got in here. It's got a computer and it's got a internet connection, and so it can transmit data and it can take data back. But it's pretty simple. It's a screen. It's basically a really small screen. Absolutely. Has anyone used these? No? I was in a meeting just recently with this guy, and he was looking at the screen and listening. We were having this discussion, and he was reading documents at the same time. He was saying, well, actually, on this page, blah, blah, blah. It was quite disconcerting. It was quite strange that this person was just like staring into space and seeing stuff. You know? I mean, yeah. So, and then another example is, the next example is scale. So I've talked about that. That's just another type of scale. And then this one here is, what's this one here? Oh, well, connecting up your car so you can see all the stuff that's going on in your cars. Like you can, if you go to a reasonably modern car now, there's a plug there that you can plug in an analyzer and get data out. Well, basically what this is doing is like, this is the plug that goes into the car, I guess, and then you can see what's happening in your car, in your engine, blah, 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 if you're interested. This one here is a sort of funny one. I sort of couldn't quite work out what this was. It's terribly cutesy, and I mean, it's beautifully cutesy, and basically it's a whole lot of like these mothers surround themselves with these little children, which are sensors, which I think from looking at the website, all it does is sense movement. So you put a sensor on your grandfather's pill bottle, okay, and I guess the assumption is if granddad's picked up his pill bottle, he's taking his pills, which is a bit of a stretch, but it just seemed to me to be a bit simplistic, but nevertheless, you know, these people, they've got a line, they've got a product, and it's all connected up to the Internet of Things. So these are like little units you'd have in the house, and then all these other little sensors are probably connected with Bluetooth. Does anyone know a definition of Bluetooth? You've probably all got Bluetooth headphones and speakers. Yep. Who's got Bluetooth headphones? You can Skype. Only one person. Okay. Well, Bluetooth mouse, I'm sort of conditioned not to have wires for some reason. But Bluetooth only goes about 10 meters, I think, something like that. So it's not very far, but it can be really useful. So there's another one. This one here is something which, there's many examples of this coming out. For instance, Nokia now have something called Nokia Treasures, which you can attach to anything that you don't want to lose. Like a cell phone. I mean, it is crazy that this machine should be able to tell if it gets a certain distance away from you. You know, you should be able to tell that, and you should be able to find it. There should be enough intelligence. I mean, I know you can do GPS and everything, but it's never enough if it's dropped down the back of the couch and you're trying to go out and, you know, kids are screaming and all that sort of stuff. So these are just little trackers that you could put onto things. Another something you could wear on your wrist, and these wrist-wearing things, like Google have got a watch, and someone else has got a watch, and Apple's about to bring out a watch, everybody thinks, and Microsoft's about to bring out a watch or something to put on your wrist. And on that is not only going to be like telling you the time and a mini screen of some sort, but also sensors. So you could be measuring your pulse and all those sort of things. Has anyone got things that they go running and measure their pulse and get all that sort of stuff? No? Somebody? One. We've got very non-technologically advanced people here, which is probably a good thing. And here's the Fitbit, which you just clip onto you, or there's one on your wrist, and it's a pedometer as you walk. It tells you how far you walk, how many steps you've gone up, how much calories you've used, blah, 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 so you can go and eat another ice cream or something. And Fitbit make a huge amount out of these because people lose them all the time. And they cost about $100, so they're not cheap. A Sky Bell, well, something, you know, so if you want to somebody to press your doorbell and you can get your call on the phone. Then there you go, and you've got a camera as well. Those have been around for quite a while. Oh, here's some watches. Talked about watches. I quite like this one. I don't know quite how this works. It'll teach you how to learn play tennis. Obviously some accelerometers or something in the tennis thing. I think tennis playing is a lot more complicated than that, but you know, a product. What were these ones now? I work out the mood you're in by putting your headphones in. I find that a bit strange anyway. I mean, here's a real classic, and like this is one of the ones that seems like really stupid. It just seems so simple, and like why would you want light bulbs to have a computer inside them and be connected to the internet? Well, there's lots of reasons, and like it's actually a really good example of not having to go and like rewire the house. So if you move into a house, the house doesn't have a dimmer in the room that you'd really like it to have a dimmer in. If you could just go down and buy a bulb, and instead of the cost of going and putting a dimmer on the wall, get an electrician in, change it all around, you just screwed in one of these, it came up on your phone, bang, you've got the problem solved. It is a product. People will buy this. And people are buying these not only for this type of application, but also for within large commercial buildings. They put in every light bulb has its own IP address, and they can control each one of these. They can tell if it's broken. They can reduce the energy consumption. They can say, okay, well, you're not allowed to draw, 100 watts. You're only allowed to draw 75 watts during this period, and so everything will go dim, and so you get energy conservation. So I think it's a really classic example of something incredibly small, incredibly dumb, that could be usefully made more intelligent. And I think that's what we want to be looking for, is what could usefully be made more intelligent. Now, when I started off talking about Lego blocks, I don't really believe they could be usefully made more intelligent. It would be a long time before that happens. But, here's a simple light bulb, which people are actually doing this now today. You can go and buy bulbs which do this right now. This is a pretty crazy one. Smart ice cubes to monitor how much you drink. I mean, that's just ridiculous. If you need that, you've got a real problem. Okay, these are another ones for tracking. Okay, tracking possessions. Like I've just been through a whole travelling thing of travelling from this country to that country, and you're jet lagged and your brain's turned to mush, and you're trying to keep track of, I've got my passport and I haven't dropped that and haven't dropped this, and just having something that you knew that if something moved away from you, either because you left it or someone took it, that you would be alerted, I think is a real winner as a product for me anyway. This one here, I'm not too sure about this one. But I have actually just been changing nappies because I used to have a new granddaughter in London, and it sort of interests me. Like I don't know what all these little sensors are, but I just, like you just need your sense of smell actually. So who knows? But this is an example of what you can like brainstorm and say, maybe that would be useful, maybe, and then either go down that track or not go down that track. But if you're not asking these questions, which these people like this have put a lot of time and money into product development, because maybe there is a potential for this. Okay, so if you were analysing the child's poo and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, smart notifications, well that's pretty, we've got that pretty much already on our phones. And, here's, what's this one? Oh, same sort of thing. Oh, here's the company that I think this is the one Apple bought. These guys, I think they actually the designers came out of Apple, they came up with this, it's like an Apple product. It's like it's beautiful in its design. The whole thing is beautiful. The software is beautiful. If I had a house that had furnaces in in America, I would be very tempted to go and get one of these because they're just really nice and the whole thing is really nice. You can turn things on remotely, etc. So that's been acquired by Apple for a lot. Once again, I mean, it's a bit like the equivalent of the light bulb. Here's a just something, plug in the PowerPoint, and bingo, you've got something that you can turn that device, whatever you plug in, on and off. Incredibly useful. You know, you go out, did I turn the heater off? Oh, I didn't turn the washing machine on, I meant to turn the washing machine on, so you just have this device in there and you can just go and turn these things on and off. So, you know, obviously a huge market for stuff like this. What was this, a kettle? Well, you know, I mean, it's just a specialised thing that's that you could do with one. I mean, you could use this one to control your, you know, 20-year-old kettle. Okay, so so that's just an example of some gadgets. Okay, and we're not even talking industrial. We're not even talking of all the other possible things. But really, and like in your design, you don't need to know how to make what's inside these little boxes. Okay, if in your design and I really would like you to think about, you know, like how could we work a Internet of Things device into our problem space. Now your problem space may be absolutely irrelevant to the Internet of Things. So I'm not saying you have to do it, but I would like you to think about how you could do it. And maybe you could, if you're not going to do it, you just have a thing that says, you know, there's absolutely nothing in here that we could think of a device or something that we could use remotely to make the user experience of using our system better. Okay, so you should think about that. Okay, so I'm now going to get out of here and just go to another presentation. If I can, I should make a comment about my technology. Okay, like people always used to question me about my technology because since I think I got my first tablet computer in 1995, tablet PC. Well, I'll even go back in time. Okay, I got my first portable computer in I think 1983. Okay? It's in my office if you ever come and visit me. It's about that big, by that big, by that big, quite heavy, keyboard folded over. I put it in my backpack and travel around the world. Okay? I used to work as a consultant, places like Africa, all over the world. Okay? It was incredibly useful because I could prepare a report, just like you guys can with your computers today, immediately. I then purchased the first laptop that ever came into New Zealand. Actually, the second, my friend got the first one. It was called a Data General 1. This looks like a laptop today, also in my office. And I had it on my desk at work. I bought it myself. And one of the executives from the software company from Wellington came up and he said, I think you should get that toy off your desk and do some work. And at that point, I realised that if people thought I was using toys, it meant I was ahead of the game. Okay. People see, oh, it's just a toy. When I got my first mobile phone, I have a mobile phone that weighs more than this computer, also in my office, great big thing like this. That mobile phone made me a lot of money because at the time I was working as a consultant, cruising around Auckland, had a lot of jobs on. People would ring up and say, look, could you come and do this and this and this? And I'd say, right, you know, I might be heading home, but I would be there. It was my answer phone. It was as it is for people everywhere today. So I've used tablets, and my tablet today of choice is Microsoft Surface, which is this funny little thing with this really weird keyboard, which I thought was absolutely ridiculous when I first started using it, but I've actually find it really nice. Just clicks on, goes backwards and forwards. This is a Model 1. It's got an absolutely ridiculous stand on it, only got one position. don't buy one of these. That's just crazy. I can't understand how any designer could have ever done that. It's the wrong angle. Everything is wrong about it. Their new version, the version 3, is absolutely magnificent, and I can't wait to get one, but they're quite expensive. So I've used tablets. I use handwriting. But I don't use, I would never buy a device without a pen. And Steve Jobs was famous for saying that anyone who designed a tablet that needed a pen needed their head read. Well, you know, Steve Jobs, love the guy, think he's amazing, but he got it wrong, because this great fat thing called a finger is a very unrefined pointing device. And as people, well, probably even back in the caveman days, realised a bit of stick with a bit of something on it was better to write with than a finger. And so he was wrong on that point, but the one thing he wasn't wrong on was that you need to tie it onto your device, because otherwise you lose it. People pick this up and it doesn't write, so they throw it in the bin. You know, and they cost $40 each, so you don't want to do that. So, but you'll also see, I still use a mouse. Sometimes I like to have a mouse. So there's, like the thing is not to look at one piece of technology, but to look at what would make your life better, or for the people that you're designing for, you can use all of these things. You don't have to use this or that or something else. Okay, so let's head over here to a slightly different take on this. It should be here somewhere. This one. Okay, I picked this up from, and it's got a, had to happen once today, didn't it? I just actually don't know how to solve this problem. Actually, maybe I can. I don't believe this. Actually, I know how to do it. Here we go. Okay, do that. See, the mouse wins. I can't do that with my pen. Okay, so I've just got to get from there onto here. We'll set it to there, and we should be amazing. Okay, so it should work. Right. Okay. Internet of Things. Stop it. See, my computer's too sensitive. Okay, so I pretty much, you know, introducing this, basically saying there's new possibilities, and like these are like in any technology sort of, you know, trying to sell the technology. We always have these enormous numbers and blah, 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 and all this sort of stuff. But basically it's saying there are huge new possibilities, new business models, and you really need to be thinking about this, designing systems. It is not enough to think of information systems as being a person sitting in front of a screen, twiddling around on a keyboard. You know, unfortunately, like one of the frightening things about working in this field is making people redundant. Okay? This is a fact. You know, I remember walking into a clothing factory years ago, and there was this office, and it was filled with, there was about, I don't know, 8 clerks in there, and they had all this paper. There was paper everywhere. And I realised that what I was going to do was to eliminate their jobs. That was a fact. That's what happened. You know, now whether they got jobs somewhere else, do something else, this is what we all hope for, but you know, you are doing this. So, and this Internet of Things is going to be part of that. So it's changing jobs, I guess. So they've been around for a long time, as I've said, they cost millions. But what's different now is, well, you know, like processors are really cheap. You can buy these little systems on a chip, which we're seeing in everything from low-end computers to actual tiny devices. I mean, the systems on a chip which are running inside our cell phones are just stunningly powerful. And of course, like most of the bulk of the cell phone, if you look at it, is the screen and the battery. Like if you take out the screen and the battery, there's not much left. So this is only big to cope with power and actually communication with the human. And of course, we come down here, and how many people have heard of cloud computing? Everyone's heard of cloud computing. Oh, whoopee, we've got something. Okay, I mean, and cloud computing is actually going, is sort of going back to, like when I entered the industry, you know, sort of heaps of years ago, people were setting up bureaus so that they had one big computer, put it in a room, and then hire time on it to other organisations. It wasn't networked, it was all batch processing using paper cards and things like that. But, you know, those machines were run all night. Like we, as programmers, we used to work at night because that's when we got cheap time to compile our programs. A compilation of a program, like, you know, when you press Visual Studio Run, okay, would take, you know, up to 20 minutes. And the cost of machine time was the equivalent of a day's pay for me. So if I made a mistake, if I left out a full stop, then I'd blow in a day's pay for the company. So you had to be very accurate. So this common cloud means that it's just so easy, and we're going to look at the cloud in great detail, and you'll see how, once again, it just changes the business model, because it's just so easy to deploy something, to get it up and running, to actually have a go, see if it works. If it doesn't work, all you've lost is your investment in the time it costs you to develop your little system, and so you can either succeed fast or fail fast. And if you do succeed, you can then scale. You can just keep clicking to say, I want more processors. And of course, every time you click up one more processor, you pay more, but you're not having to go and install, you know, into some data center that you have to run, etc. So this is huge. This is huge for software developers, for entrepreneurs, for everybody, and also to connect up to the common cloud, all of this. Big data analytics. Has anyone here done 330? Has anyone done 330 with Amy? Poor Amy fell over the other day and broke her nose. It's awful. Anyway, I'm sure she's talked about analytics. Like analytics are the great growth industry for jobs. You know, so if you haven't done 330, I really recommend it, because there's so much data around and people don't have time to analyse it. Like in the Cecil database, there is trillions of rows of data that could be analysed. Every click, when you click on anything in Cecil, everything is logged, everything is audited, but it's hardly made use of. Solves real problems of resource scarcity. So, you know, we have a huge potential to make things more efficient, because if we measure something, then we can change it. So if we're measuring the energy of a building, the building's use, and we can see where the energy is being wasted, like I can see in my house every morning. I happen to have my daughter and grandchildren living there at the moment, and they go out every morning, grumpy grandfather, and leave the heaters on. See? But I could do that with my eye. But on an industrial scale, if you could monitor that type of thing and turn things off, then you save money. It's really interesting, this Gartner hype cycle. Has anyone seen this drawing before? Yeah, surely in business. Anyway, it's a real classic, because basically down here, human augmentation, 3D bio printing, quantum computing, computer brain interface, like all of these are possible, but they've got a long way to go. They've got the expectations have to get up to here, and then they come down, and then everyone starts saying, oh, yeah, this is never going to happen. But, you know, as time goes on, they slowly start to happen, and then we come out here, and you move into a more just progressive development of these things. And if you look out here, the Internet of Things is way out here. Well, I would suggest, like now in 2014, it's right down here because it really is happening. You know, like these people are acquiring companies, people are making these products, and there's going to be crazy ones and not crazy ones, but it's certainly happening. And cloud computing, just everybody is saying that almost the only barrier to the large-scale adoption of cloud computing is the NSA and people like that. People don't want to put their data where the spies can get at it, but we don't know where the spies are anyway, so it's a moot point. But the feeling is if you have your data within your own data center, you control it. Like I know the university would no way put all the students' records and marks and everything up into cloud computing today. Just that the administration wouldn't do that, they just wouldn't. So there are barriers, but they're basically on security and privacy. So other people are going like, it's a no-brainer because it's cheaper. And so I'm sure, does anyone in here want to work in IT infrastructure, like building servers, and you do? Okay. In the future, we better do it now because there might be no future. I'm sure there will be jobs for a while, but it's becoming less because if somebody wants to, say, use Microsoft SharePoint, you can get it in the cloud. And why would you do it anywhere else unless there was particular reasons to do it? So I'm sure you'll get a job. But there's going to be less of them, you know, because it's basically, if you can go and just like, as you'll see on Azure, you can go in and say, okay, I want a, you know, either a Windows server or a Linux server. You press a button and the server's mounted for you. If you want an image which has got some application on it, maybe you want a WordPress site or something like that, you just press another button and it installs WordPress on it. So these jobs become less and less, and the same with DBAs. Okay, well, looks like we'll stop there and keep talking about this on Monday. And think about those projects. On Tuesday, you have to have a project for your group.
For individual project, can you just choose our own topic, or
Sorry?
can we choose our own topic for individual, our own problem for individual project?
I haven't talked about the individual stuff yet. We're just talking about the group one at the moment. You're in a group, right? Yeah. Just focus on that, and we'll get on to the other one next.
Probably.
Hi, I've rung Stephen, but he hasn't replied to me yet. So if you see him, just tell him that
we will have a stand-up today.
Okay, well just tell him I'm really happy to come in. Like I'm pretty free tomorrow, I think, if he wants me to. I can pop over there and talk to him.
Okay. Are you going to be free and talk?
Sorry?
Are you going to be free and talk today?
No. Why, what do you...
Because we will have a stand-up there.
Oh no, I can't go there, no, I can't do that. Yeah.
But you're free those times.
But tomorrow, if you wanted to meet me tomorrow, just talk about this technology thing, you know, because it's really important, because I think, I mean, like it might be a stupid idea, but we should try. And also, I worked out how to, I just have to send you a shortcut to the Visual Studio, so I can do that, so I will do that, yeah.
talk about the title at the beginning?
Of the lecture. Just some admin things about using discussions. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. It's been recorded anyway, so.
With Trailer, what do we have to rename the username?
Just the board. If you haven't got your name on it, I want your names on them. Just the board in Trello. Yeah. So just.